Good morning. Welcome, excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to the 4th Annual Power of Collaboration Global Summit at the United Nations. Leveraging technology, investment, and philanthropy for the Sustainable Development Goals.
And now, welcome to Blockchain Technology for Sustainable Development Goals. This session will be moderated by Kate Mulder. And when we just talk about why we at this session, and on January 7th, that we, FinTech for Good, working with other companies and organizations, we launched the Blockchain for SDG Summit in DC. And that's where all the conversation started. And we're excited to see that we have exciting panel here, and I will be drawing them.
Over $1 billion have been invested in the industry, and over 1,000 startup companies, as well as large and medium organizations that are adopting and deploying the technology. Some people title blockchain as the next version of the internet. Others talk about how it is transforming an updated infrastructure for our business, our economic, our social, and even our political ecosystem. So it's early days for the blockchain industry. And, with that comes a lot of challenges and risks, but some exciting opportunities. And what I think is fascinating about this industry is the rapid pace that both public and private companies and organizations are testing and exploring this technology. So it does feel like we're on the verge of something here. And I think one of the things that's important to remember as audience members is that, blockchain is a bit hard to explain, yes, and understand, but you don't have to get wrapped up in the technological aspects of blockchain. It's more about just, I don't know how the app works on my phone or how this microphone is working or whether it is. But I know when I press a button, the car shows up in about 2 minutes, right? So we're going to do our best today to really give you the nuts and bolts of blockchain, why it's different, have we been here before, yes or no, and the differentiating factors. So I'm very honored to have a wonderful group of panelists that represent a broad array of expertise in the blockchain industry. And I'll just have you guys quickly state your name and your title and 1 or 2 words that share a benefit to you of what the blockchain does. But just 1 or 2 words, and then we'll get to some details.
Okay, so my name is Xiaochen, and I'm founder of FinTech for Good. And so for me, that's what blockchain can really contribute to the SDG, or lines in 3. One is, a digital identity for women, 2 for refugee, and 3 for energy system. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Brigid McDermott. I am VP of Business Development and Partnerships for Blockchain at IBM. And for me, blockchain is all about trust. And I think that trust makes a lot of things possible when you're dealing with technologies and interactions across ecosystems. And so that's the power of the transformation.
Hi, my name is Fei Zhang. I'm the global lead of blockchain program at Allianz Group, coming from Munich. For me, blockchain represents several characteristics. First, it represents immutability and auditability. And second, it represents capability to represent a single version of truth across multiple stakeholders. And it also has the capability of providing digital signatures. It enables democracy, actually.
My name is Caterina, and I am a blockchain generalist and educator So if you have any questions about it, come and ask me. No question is too basic. That's my job, is translating the technology for everyone else. I also am the CSR director for Elephant. And for me, what's gotten me very excited about blockchains is access. Access for people who have traditionally not have access to financial systems, to economic systems, to many, many systems that have kept them disenfranchised.
That takes us to a great segue into our question of, let's just define very briefly and concretely, and Caterina, I'll start with you since you're a non-technical aspect of blockchain. What is the blockchain? Is it the same as Bitcoin? If not, how is it different? And what are some differentiating factors?
To describe blockchains, I always start with Bitcoin, partly because that's what most people have heard about and understand. And Bitcoin is a kind of digital currency. Digital in the sense that it exists only electronically. There's no actual coin or paper dollar or any kind of tangible kind of monetary system. But it is used for transactions, for buying and selling things. And what's magical about Bitcoin is that it's not run by a government or by a corporation or by a bank. It is run by the people, and it was created by the people. And it is distributed and decentralized, meaning everyone all over the world has access to it, with the internet, with electricity, within some limitations. So that's the digital currency. Again, very brief description. And when we talk about blockchain, blockchain is basically the software underneath it, the software that created it. But the properties of blockchain allow it to be used for many other things. So a digital currency for transactions is just one component. And my colleagues are going to speak about other possible use case applications and some of the specific qualities that make blockchains usable in other ways around smart contracts, around identities, and many other possible applications.
So blockchain is basically a distributed ledger, right? If you are trying to do a transaction with someone else and you are looking at your set of books and someone else is looking at their set of books, you guys can have worked together for decades. You can have all the trust in the world, but one fat finger of typing 42 instead of 24, and you're on the phone for 3 days trying to figure out whether the number was 24 cartons of DVD players or 42 cartons. 24 cartons of grain or containers of grain, 42 containers of grain, right? The ability to look at the same information at the same point in time as anybody changes your ability to trust within an ecosystem. You're looking at the same information, you know it's the same information, you trust it's the same information. It makes it easier to interact. That's what blockchain does.
And just so we're on the same page in regard to definitions as we continue the panel, what is, who would like to explain what a token is and a smart contract?
Yeah, just think about, what money is about. And it represents value, and its financial value. Then we just change it to what about, non-financial value, and what can represent that. And if you, for example, you like something, and you have preference, and or you have belief, and all those are valuable, but how to put that or give the proper value to that. And token is one of the way which actually can represent the value of the thing. And so when you just have that, the price is decided, and then to the transfer of value can through token, and also can preserve by the token. So that's one of the explanation. Yeah.
I would like to add something about smart contract. As was just explained, the Bitcoin is a use case of the blockchain, and it's a currency. If we think about what is a currency, what is cash, cash is basically additions and subtractions distributed on the ledger. And blockchain provides a mechanism for implementing this cash on a distributed ledger. So what is smart contract? It's simply extending that additions and subtraction logic to more complex operations. So instead of having additions and subtractions, could we have functions? Could we have variables? Could we have small computer programs that run and affects these distributed ledgers of balances? And that is smart contracts. So you could imagine having stocks, bonds, insurance contracts, reinsurance contracts, credit default swaps on these distributed databases.
So I can give a concrete example of both smart contracts and blockchain that might be helpful. So we have a global financing business. We lend out $44 billion a year in people looking to finance the purchase of IT. At any given point in time, $100 million is tied up in disputes. It's $100 million that's not doing anybody any good. And these are with companies that we've been dealing with for decades. What we put in a blockchain system in September, within about 3 or 4 months, we had seen a drop by 75% of the length of time of disputes, from 40 days down to 10. And we had seen improved capital allocation by 40%, right? So really concrete numbers, the kind of things our CFO got very excited about. The smart contract portion is, okay, if an item comes in, you have an agreement that when it hits somebody's loading dock, the payment can happen. These days, with regular contracts, somebody then has to check, sign off, and say this happens. But with a blockchain smart contract, you've already agreed that the information is true ahead of time. And so when the incident happens, it can happen automatically. It's a way to automate the transactions based on the fact that you already trust the data.
Thank you. And as we're here at the UN, and I'd like to introduce our final panelist, Sam Cassatt, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at ConsenSys, and they are on the ground developing a lot of applications in many different sectors as a ventures, like hub and spoke lab for blockchain applications. So, here at the UN, we're passionate about the Sustainable Development Goals, and if you're interested in economic development and inclusion and climate change and all of that, the interesting thing about blockchain is that if we had a dartboard and put every single Sustainable Development Goal on it, you could probably throw a dart, and I'm not sure if that's allowed here, but you could probably throw a dart and have a solution that either somebody has theoretically thought about for improving these goals or is actually working on. So we will cover a bit of those as well. And of course, one of the first Sustainable Development Goals is no poverty, right? When we talk about the 2.5 billion unbanked, access to identity, and financial inclusion. So we will explain a few use cases in regard to, let's say I'm a woman in sub-Saharan Africa or in the Middle East, and I can't get a bank account or start a business because I need the representation of a male. Or maybe I'm in Honduras, and in order for me to get credit, I need, my land title is the most important. Or in dealing with the refugee situation that we have across the world today. So how, I'll ask the panelists, and I'll direct some of this to you, Sam, is, how is blockchain improving those access and helping us reframe the concept of identity and lowering the barriers to financial inclusion?
Sure. So one of the most interesting aspects of blockchain technology is the identity infrastructure that underlies it and the low barrier to entry to utilize that identity infrastructure. So by doing something that essentially equates to installing an application on a smartphone, the 2.5 billion people on the planet that don't have a financial identity can suddenly start using applications that behave the same as much of the very mature financial infrastructure that we enjoy in the United States and much of the developed world. So, for instance, if I'm a woman in a context that doesn't normally provide me the ability to have an independent financial identity, to take payments to a bank account, to secure loans, to have investment in a venture that I might want to pursue. Suddenly, with only installing an application on a phone, I have the ability to enjoy pretty much the same level of financial services that I could enjoy having a Social Security card in the United States and a bank account. I not only have the ability to take payments, but then to accrue financial behavior financial reputation that then can be used to provide me something like a credit score that then can be used to provide me with microfinance, loans, investment in various ventures that I might want to pursue. So there are a number of companies on the ground doing that right now. BankU is one of them. In my company, ConsenSys, we're also working on a product called Uport that allows essentially anyone to enjoy financial services with almost no cost.
Great. And what about the refugee situation? How can blockchain support that?
So similarly, if all I need is a smartphone application to create essentially an identity that is owned by me, it's created by me, then what I can do is I can also ask for additional entities. That could be a bank, it could be a government, it could be a part of the United Nations that can then do what we would call a test to that identity. So they can also sort of write something to a blockchain that says, I attest that this identity that lives on this phone and is connected to this human being is also an identity that I sanction as the UN or as a government. So not only does that afford you the ability to participate in the financial system, but it also provides a relatively high security mechanism by which someone's identity can be linked to them, either biometrically or simply just the fact that it's created by them and managed by them. And that is a very light touch and very low barrier to entry way to create an identity that doesn't require the normal infrastructure that exists now in order to give, for instance, a refugee an identity. Not only that, but when they get to wherever they're going, they can suddenly have access to something that behaves the same as a financial system. And that could be on the part of, say, a startup that wishes to build that financial infrastructure because it's part of their business model. It could be on the part of NGOs that wish to help make that happen. The point is that it's only an application, and that application costs almost nothing to deploy and to run, and therefore allows that refugee to suddenly start participating in the economy in a way that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Thank you. And we'll just spend 1 minute covering an interest and passion in sustainable cities and clean energy. So how is the blockchain creating a more sustainable future when we think about our energy systems?
I'll speak to this on a theoretical level. If you imagine a local community that has solar panels on some of the houses with a blockchain network, they can track who's using how much energy. They can share the energy from one house's solar panels with other neighbors using it at different times, simultaneously tracking the usage. They can also, on the blockchain, track the transactions. So neighbors will be paying each other for the use or putting energy back into the system. And blockchains allow a kind of network infrastructure possibility of doing the transactions automatically and small transactions as well, microtransactions, at a very low cost and with efficiency, meanwhile keeping this all within a local network.
Yeah, just to add a little bit, because we in China we launched an energy blockchain lab, and the lab basically are developing 2 new products. The first one is called the Carbon Ledger, and basically whoever are involved in the CDM world before that, the hectic there is that for when you just change from your asset to a carbon asset, it takes at least 12 months or to 14 months. And then there'll be a lot of people and organizations involved, and it's high cost. And finally, that the carbon cost is extremely high. It doesn't make business sense to just develop that. And for the first product called the Carbon Ledger, the lab just basically developed putting the carbon assets generation, registration into one streamline, and which can cut the duration of from 12 months to 3 months. And also that's when you just as all stakeholders around it, then you can just go back to check that and then to validate and then improve the accuracy and also transparency. And I will leave another case for Sam. Yeah.
Sure. I wanted to mention as well a project that we are doing currently with RWE, which is now Energy in Germany. It's one of the largest utilities in Germany. And we noticed essentially that there is a deficit in our ability to incentivize clean energy generation and clean energy storage on a localized level, being that in most of the regulatory frameworks, in most of the markets, when you have a solar panel on your house, for instance, the rate at which you're paid for that is the wholesale rate, right? And in some jurisdictions, it's even illegal, and some of the power companies fight against that, and there's not the regulatory framework to support that. So what we're doing is we're actually using blockchain to create a parallel accounting mechanism for the grid that when the electrons or when the kilowatt hours come off of a solar panel, that consumer or prosumer actually takes those tokens, they take those units of kilowatt hours, and they're able to sell them directly to their neighbors. And what that does is that whatever that delta is between the retail and the wholesale rate, that's the increased incentivization for clean power generation. That's that much more people that are going to be incentivized to do that. You can also imagine how that would extend to localized storage as well. You can imagine Tesla wall batteries being able to save up energy when the load is low on the grid and release it when the load is high, forcing essentially the most inefficient power generation assets never to be turned on at peak load, which obviously has pretty vast advantages for clean energy.
Thank you. And going a bit back forward to some of the business case and supply chain issues, better, faster, cheaper is something we hear a lot about technology. However, maybe Brigid can share some of the aspects of what is different about this, especially if we're looking into food supply, security, safety issues on a commerce level and actually at a global level as well.
So blockchain is useful when you've got an ecosystem together to do it. And so we're doing a pilot project right now with Walmart looking at food safety. I don't know if people know the incidents, but 1 in 10 people have a food incident. That means they get sick from food every year. 1/3 of all food is wasted every year. And our belief is that we can use blockchain to actually both sort of shrink the amount of time that the supply chain actually takes. More visibility means faster movement through the supply chain, as well as improve compliance, and because you have better trackability and traceability of what came from where. So if there is a problem, you can quickly pull an item off of the shelf rather than having to pull all spinach in the entire United States off the shelf for an E. coli problem on one shelf and actually negatively impact the eating of spinach in the United States for 5 to 6 years. So using blockchain to provide the information means that across the pilot that we're looking at with them is in China. So 100 million farms, thousands of manufacturers, thousands of retailers. How do we create that trail of information that is accessible to allow people to more safely, more easily, and more quickly get the food that they want and trust that it is the food that they want? Supply chain can really be dramatically impacted by blockchain.
Thank you. Another interesting component of the blockchain industry is just the fact that we're seeing a lot of collaboration among businesses that normally compete against each other, or sectors of private and public that don't normally talk to each other, because there's this sense of maybe if we do work together, especially because it's a decentralized platform. I know Fei is the founding partner of B3I, which is a collaborative organization with the insurance industry. So I'll have him share that a little bit too, and then we can also just talk about what's going on in the space of the collaboration and organizations, and how are we seeing this maybe in a way that we haven't seen before.
So totally agree on this collaboration point. For me, I kind of have 3 mental dimensions in terms of use cases of blockchain. The first dimension is within the perimeters of the company, we can have use cases that is beneficial for the company itself. Say for a global company like Allianz, we have lots of companies within the group. The second level is industry-wide collaboration. This is where the B3I fall into the case. So the B3I is the Blockchain Insurance Industry Initiative. It's an initiative of collaborative research and development into blockchain by the insurers, and reinsurers of the world, the major insurers and reinsurers. And we are focusing in the first place on a specific use case on managing reinsurance contracts on the blockchain. And I see a lot of similarities, like the example IBM has quoted. It's a process that is currently very paper-driven, and there's a lot of reconciliation done on all the parties involved in the business process. And what blockchain offers that we can see is synchronization, providing this synchronized view, a single point, a single version of truth across multiple entities, although people are seeing on different applications, but they are seeing a synchronized version of the truth. It's really amazing to see so many industry stakeholders getting into the same room and coming to a same conclusion about what is the vision that we're trying to achieve, what is the business process of the future as an industry that we want to implement.
To add a little bit about the blockchain for SDG Alliance, that we have that in DC, and then it was really participated by all the SDG community together with the blockchain community. And based on that, now we have Insurance Blockchain Lab participate with a lot of insurance company with the blockchain company. Then we have the banking blockchain lab. Then we also have the sustainable infrastructure blockchain lab, and also blockchain legal lab. And a lot of time that you see that those people who before compete with each other, because of blockchain, that then they come together, really define the next generation product, which can add great value for clients and customers in the future.
Yeah, wonderful. I think our time is up. Unfortunately, of course, we could go for hours and days, I'm sure, with this panel and learn a lot of wonderful information. So we will be here after. And, another collaborative initiative happened last week with a bunch of companies and organizations as well. And you can ask Sam about that, too. So thank you for being here. And I hope you at least have walked away with a more clear understanding of some of the use cases and whatever you're passionate about and how you want to serve in business and private sector, in specific economies and types of people and situation, just to encourage to explore a bit more, talk to the experts, and see how this new foundational infrastructure is being created and work together to support the future of it. Thank you.